At the break of dawn, a plaintive cry so raw, so achingly human, halted Emma Rodriguez in her tracks. She had been pacing the edges of the forsaken Green Valley meatpacking plant, desperate to outrun the haunted shadows that tormented her nights. For nearly 6 weeks, she'd steered clear of this cursed ground. Yet this morning, an unseen force compelled her to return. The lament faded, growing faint and fragile. Every fiber of her being urged her to turn away. She'd come to Milbrook to vanish, to escape relentless judgment, to bury a shattered past deep within the shadows. Getting involved meant exposure. It meant risking everything. But that cry, oh God, that pitiful, fading call pierced through the fortress she had built around her soul. Step by step, she approached the ruined septic tank, the stench hitting her. First, the acrid chemical bite of decay and death. Then she saw him, a German shepherd, barely keeping his mighty head above the poisonous water, eyes locking with hers in a shared, silent plea that only those drowning truly know. Sometimes salvation arrives when the saved are the ones most in need. Before we dive deeper, please hit the like button and tell me which city you're watching from. Now back to our story. Emma Rodriguez was 43 and had been running for 8 long months. Once she was a trauma nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Chicago, skilled, respected, a steady force thriving amid chaos. Then came the night that tore her world apart. A 19-year-old named Sarah Webb died under her care. Though the official inquiry cleared Emma of any criminal fault, the guilt embedded so deeply in her bones that she barely recognized the woman staring back in the mirror. She'd escaped to Milbrook, Tennessee 6 weeks ago, a town of 3,200 people nestled in rolling hills where everyone knew one another and strangers were always noticed. Emma found a humble cottage on the town's edge near the abandoned plant locals avoided like the plague. She took a part-time job at the corner diner, kept her head bowed low, spoke only when absolutely necessary. Isolation had become her self-imposed exile. The sleepless nights haunted her the most. She lay awake replaying that fateful night in the emergency room. The chaos, the blood, her trembling hand jotting down the wrong dosage. 10 milligrams instead of 1. By the time the mistake was caught, Sarah Webb's young heart was already failing. Emma still saw the girl's eyes not accusing, but somehow serene, as she whispered, "It's okay. You tried." But it was never going to be okay. Not ever. Milbrook itself felt suspended in time, where the church remained the epicenter of life, and Pastor William Thornton's Sunday sermons carried more weight than any mayoral decree. The Green Valley meatpacking plant shut down in 2003 after a contamination scandal Emma barely understood. More than 2 decades later, it stood as a crumbling monument to corporate neglect, its septic tank still brimming with toxic industrial poison that no one had bothered to clean up. Emma stumbled onto this path by accident that Thursday morning, driven by restlessness and the crushing weight of another sleepless night. She never walked this way. The plant unsettled her, its shattered windows and rusted machines mirrors to her own broken life. Yet today something drew her close. Fate, maybe. Punishment, perhaps. She no longer believed there was a difference. Emma ran. But something had drawn her here. Today maybe destiny, maybe a reckoning. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. Emma kept running. Her 43-year-old body hadn't moved this swiftly in many months, but fueled by adrenaline, she dashed back toward the cottage. She burst through this doorway, eyes darting desperately for anything that could aid her. Rope, yes. There, tucked away in the utility closet. Work gloves, a tarp. Her hands trembled as she grabbed each item, her mind racing through physics calculations she hadn't revisited since high school. How deep was that tank? 12 feet, maybe 15. And the dog's weight 70, 85 pounds. There was no time to call animal control. By the time they arrived, he wouldn't survive. She sprinted back, supplies clumsily cradled in her arms, breathing hard through ragged gasps. The morning sun climbed higher now, revealing the full, haunting reality of the scene before her. The German shepherd's head had sunk lower beneath the water. His cries had dwindled to faint, barely audible whimpers. "Hold on," Emma called down to him. "Just hang in there." She secured the rope around the strongest metal framework she could find, testing its strength with her full body weight. It held firm. Then she crafted a makeshift harness with her nurse's skilled hands, remembering knots from years of securing medical equipment. The toxic fumes rising from the tank made her eyes sting and her stomach churn. But she steeled herself and edged closer. Old metal rungs embedded long ago for maintenance access jutted from the concrete wall. Emma donned her gloves and began the descent, each rung slick with chemical residue. The stench grew so fierce it felt like breathing flames. Where droplets of contaminated water splashed her exposed skin burned painfully. Halfway down, she reached him. "Easy, boy," she whispered, voice trembling. "I've got you." The dog was too drained to resist. When her hands met his soaked fur, he looked at her with those deep, knowing brown eyes that held a wisdom beyond what seemed possible. Emma fastened the makeshift harness around his chest, just behind his front legs, pulling it snug, careful not to squeeze too tight, and cut off his breath. The climb back upward tested her to the limit. The rope dug into her shoulders as she heaved her legs, bracing hard against the metal rungs. 85 pounds of lifeless weight threatened to pull them both down. Her muscles cried out in agony. Chemical burns seared her skin beneath the gloves, but she tugged with everything she had again and again. When the dog's body finally cleared the tank's edge, Emma hauled him onto solid ground and collapsed beside him. Both lay there gasping for breath, covered in toxic sludge smelling of death and industrial poison. Emma forced herself to sit up and examine him closely. What she saw tightened her chest with furious heartache. Beneath the matted, fouled fur, his ribs stood out sharply, severe malnutrition etched into his frame. His front paws were raw and bloody torn from clawing at the concrete, nails worn down to the quick. Fresh bruises marked his skin beneath the grime, and old scars faded, but telling showed this wasn't the first time he'd faced cruelty. He had been beaten, starved, then left here to die. When she wrapped him gently in the tarp, the dog didn't try to flee. He simply surrendered to her care, too weak for anything but quiet trust, as she lifted him toward her truck. Emma staggered under his weight, but she refused to pause until he was safely nestled in the back seat. At home, she filled the bathtub with lukewarm water, careful not to shock his hypothermic body with heat, and spent the next 3 hours tenderly washing away layers of toxic filth. The water needed to be refreshed 4 times before it ran clear at last. Slowly, his true fur colors appeared tan and black, the classic German shepherd coat meant to be striking yet dulled by trauma and neglect. As Emma worked, she found a torn collar tangled deep in his matted neck fur. With care, she pulled it free, squinting to read the faded name tag. It said Hope, with a phone number beneath so worn she barely made out the digits. Hope? Someone had named this battered soul Hope. Emma placed the collar aside. She'd handle that puzzle tomorrow. For now, her priority was to steady him. She prepared simple food, boiled chicken and rice, plain but nourishing. Hope managed only a few bites before exhaustion overtook him entirely. Emma carried him to a soft nest of blankets in her living room and sat by his side, one hand resting gently on his damp fur, feeling the steady beat of his heart. As shadows deepened around her, Emma's thoughts drifted back to another night. St. Mary's Hospital, the chaos of the emergency room, and Sarah Webb's young face, her eyes fluttering as life slipped away because Emma had made a devastating mistake. The girl's final words still echoed in her mind. "It's okay. You tried. I couldn't save her," Emma whispered softly to the sleeping dog. "But maybe I can save you." Was this about redemption, an attempt to balance the scales of fate by saving a creature when she had failed a human? Emma looked at Hope's battered frame, the scars telling silent stories of pain he couldn't voice aloud. He reminded her of Sarah, both victims of cruel circumstances beyond their control, both abandoned by a world that should have protected them. Honestly, Hope reminded her of herself bruised, forsaken, left to wither in a toxic pit of despair. "If I can keep you alive," she whispered, "maybe I'm not utterly worthless." But even as the words formed, a knot of fear twisted deep in her gut. What if she failed again? What if trying simply wasn't enough? What if she let another innocent life slip away? The pale morning light poured through the windows of Emma's cottage on Friday, and Hope still slept. His breathing steady, deeper than the night before. Emma sat beside him on the floor, the torn collar in her hand's eyes fixed on the faded name tag, as though it held secrets beyond the barely legible phone number. She wrestled with herself all through the night whether to make the call. The right choice was to try to find the owner and return the dog, but her gut twisted at the thought. Anyone who let such a noble creature fall into a septic tank of poison surely didn't deserve him back. Yet she needed to know the truth. With trembling fingers, Emma dialed the number. The phone rang 4 times before an elderly woman answered. Hello? Hi, my name is Emma Rodriguez. I found a German Shepherd with this number on his collar. The tag says Hope, she said softly. Silence stretched across the line. Emma heard the woman's breath hitch. Finally, with heavy sorrow, the woman said, That's my granddaughter's dog. But she passed away 8 months ago. Emma's world spun, her mouth dry and trembling. What was your granddaughter's name? She asked. Sarah Webb. She was just 19, died during surgery at St. Mary's S. Mary's Hospital in Chicago. The phone nearly slipped from Emma's trembling fingers. The walls of the small cottage seemed to close in tighter around her. Sarah Webb. The dog that belonged to Sarah Webb. Could the universe really be this merciless, this deliberately cruel in its punishment? Are you still there? The woman's voice gently asked. Yes, Emma whispered, barely able to breathe. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, dear. After Sarah passed, my son Marcus found some hope in the dog, but something in him just never healed. Grief swallowed him whole. Mrs. Webb sighed deeply, the weight of her pain settling between them. He left town about 3 weeks ago, said he couldn't bear to keep the dog any longer. Seeing Hope brought back too many painful memories of Sarah. Her voice faltered. Why do you ask? Where did you find him? Emma's mind raced, torn between honesty and self-protection. Should she tell the truth that she'd found Hope broken and dying abandoned in a pool of toxic waste, left to suffer by this very man who should have cared for him? Instead, she chose the safer path. I found him wandering alone. He seems like he's been through hell. I just wanted to reunite him with his owner. Emma's voice shook as she spoke the lie. That's very kind of you, Mrs. Webb replied softly. Marcus is staying in Jackson about 30 miles from here. Let me give you his number. Emma scribbled the digits down her hand, trembling so badly the numbers blurred on the page. They exchanged a few more polite words. Then Emma ended the call. She sat frozen, phone still gripped tight in her white-knuckled hand, silence stretching heavy around her. Sarah Webb's dog. Of every lost soul wandering Tennessee, every forsaken creature in the world, she had saved the one who belonged to the girl whose life she had shattered. Was this fate's cruel joke, some twisted cosmic reckoning, or was it a sign? Something Emma just couldn't yet understand. She gazed down at Hope now, fully awake, his deep brown eyes filled with quiet wisdom. He'd survived because of her, yet his pain was somehow tied to her as well. When she had failed Sarah, she'd sown the seeds of grief that drove Marcus Webb to hurt this innocent dog. I killed his daughter, Emma whispered through clenched teeth. And he tried to kill your spirit? A righteous fury ignited within her chest, burning fierce and white-hot. How could Marcus Webb abandon this dog? Hope had been Sarah's loyal companion, her closest friend. Maybe the last piece of her still alive in this world. And Marcus had thrown him away like trash, left him to suffer and potentially die amid poison and filth. Emma's fists curled tight, trembling with indignation. She wanted to call Marcus, now demand answers, confront his cruelty. But then what? If Marcus found out who she really was, the nurse who couldn't save his daughter, what would happen? Would he spitefully take Hope back? Would he go even further and make sure the dog's suffering ended for good? And if she turned Hope over anonymously to animal control, at least he'd be safe from Marcus. But could Emma abandon hope again after he'd already been forsaken once? She stared into those trusting brown eyes, cautious but hopeful, and made up her mind. "No," she said softly, laying a comforting hand on his head. "You've been abandoned enough. I'll care for you until you're strong again, and then we'll figure out what comes next together." That night near the stroke of midnight, Hope stirred disoriented. He lifted his head, ears twitching, trying desperately to make sense of this new, strange place. A soft whimper slipped from his lips, not a sound of pain, but of confusion and fear. He tried to grasp the strange new world around him. A soft whimper slipped out not from pain, but from confusion and fear. Emma was instantly at his side, settling down on the floor and gently brushing her hand over his head. "It's all right," she whispered softly. "You're safe now." And in that quiet darkness, drained by exhaustion, with no fear of judgment or blame from this dog, Emma began to open up. "Your girl," she choked out, voice cracking. "Sarah, she was just a kid 18. With her whole life stretched out before her college dreams, maybe a family one day. She wanted to be a vet. Did you know that hearing Sarah's name perked Hope's ears? And it shattered Emma's heart just a little more. "I tried to save her, I truly did. But I made the wrong decision. I gave her the wrong medication dose and then all hell broke loose. By the time I realized the mistake, it was too late. The memory was raw, burning, vivid still. Even after 8 agonizing months, Hope did something extraordinary. He raised his head and licked Emma's hand, a tender, intentional act, his first genuine show of affection since the day he'd been rescued. Emma crumbled completely, shoulders heaving with sobs long held back. "I'm so sorry," she cried into his fur. "So unbelievably sorry." Hope responded by resting his head in her lap, his weight steady, warm, and soothing. He couldn't grasp the heavy truth she was pouring out, couldn't know the part she played in Sarah's death. But still he offered solace, pure instinctive comfort. "You forgive me, don't you?" Emma whispered, fingers quietly threading through his fur. "Even though you have no idea what I did." They drifted into sleep like that, a broken woman, a broken dog, each silently saving the other, neither fully understanding how. For the first time in 8 months, Emma found sleep without nightmares. And for the first time in weeks, Hope slept without a trace of fear. Come morning, the world would grow more complicated. But right then, in the stillness of that humble cottage, 2 wounded souls discovered a rare and unexpected peace. The first sign of trouble arrived on Saturday morning when Emma brought Hope to Dr. James Patterson, the town veterinarian whose clinic sat between the hardware store and post office on Main Street. Hope was steadily growing stronger, eating more every day. Emma wanted a professional opinion on his recovery. She had been feeding him boiled chicken and rice by hand, quietly proud as his ribs grew less visible and his fur started to shine with new life. Dr. Patterson was a kind man in his 60s, with gentle hands and a voice soft enough to soothe even the most frightened creatures. He gave Hope a thorough examination, noting healing chemical burns, infected wounds finally closing, and the way the dog's eyes never left Emma's face filled with unwavering trust. "He's doing wonderfully," Dr. Patterson said, his weathered face blooming into a warm smile. "Whatever you're doing, keep at it. This boy trusts you without hesitation." But it was the receptionist, Gladys Morrison, who shifted everything. Gladys was a Milbrook fixture, a woman in her 70s who seemed to know every secret before it even unfolded, and she believed sharing gossip was her civic duty. She had been quietly eavesdropping from the front desk, and when Emma signed the payment with her full name, Emma Rodriguez, a spark lit behind Gladys's sharp gaze. "Rodriguez Gladys," said slowly, her voice carrying that unmistakable tone of someone who's finally piecing the puzzle together. "Emma Rodriguez. Why does that name sound so familiar?" Emma felt her stomach sink. She murmured something about needing to get home, grabbed Hope's leash and hurried out, but the damage was already done. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Emma's phone, the local number she'd been forced to get for the diner job, started ringing non-stop. The first message was, "Kurt, we know who you really are." The next was sharp with anger. "How dare you show your face in a decent town?" The third message made her hands tremble. "Sarah Webb's family lives here in Jackson. Did you come just to torment them?" Gladys had uncovered the truth. The news had made the Chicago papers 8 months ago. Nurse's mistake costs a young girl her life. Gladys had a cousin in Illinois who sent the article. Now, through the lightning-fast gossip chain of small-town rumors, everyone in Milbrook knew the quiet woman working the corner diner was the nurse responsible for Sarah Webb's death. That night, Emma sat alone on the floor of her cottage, Hope's head resting gently in her lap, listening as one voicemail after another filled her inbox, some icy and indifferent, others seething with anger. She didn't blame them. How could she blame any of them when she'd already condemned herself with far harsher words over the past 8 months? Sunday morning, she stayed away from church, not that she'd been attending much lately. Still, Pastor William Thornton came seeking her out. He showed up at 10 in the morning, flanked by 3 church elders, their cars blocking her driveway like a warning. "Miss Rodriguez," Pastor Thornton said the moment she opened the door, a tall man with silver hair, and the kind of commanding presence that even made the mayor step back respectfully. "We all know who you are. This community is built on trust and moral integrity," he declared. Emma stood silently in the doorway, Hope at her side. One of the elders, a stern woman named Margaret Hayes, spoke next. "We've discovered you've been collecting charity donations from the church fund money intended to help those in need through your diner wages." "That's my money," Emma said softly. "My wages." Pastor Thornton cut in, money donated by church members to support struggling workers. "Miss Rodriguez, not to be wasted on animals when there are people suffering." "This dog is a living being who was abandoned to die," Emma insisted, as Hope pressed even closer to her leg. "You couldn't save a human life?" Margaret Hayes snapped, her voice cold as shattered glass. "Now you're squandering church resources on a dog. Where are your priorities?" The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to meet their harsh, unforgiving eyes. "This dog is a victim too," she said firmly. "He deserves a shot at life." Pastor Thornton's face darkened. "Miss Rodriguez, we're asking you to hand over the animal to animal control. Let them deal with it in the proper way. We also believe it's best if you find work elsewhere. Your presence here only brings division. Get off my property," Emma said, her voice unwavering despite trembling hands. The pastor's eyebrows lifted in surprise. They departed with sealed lips and exchanged looks heavy with unspoken meaning. Pastor Thornton's final words hung in the air like an ominous warning. "This isn't finished, Miss Rodriguez." The community would have its voice heard. Monday arrived, bringing the crisis Emma had feared most. At dawn, Hope awoke burning with a fever so high his body trembled violently, the shakes spiraling into relentless seizures. Emma swathed him in blankets and hurried to Dr. Patterson's clinic, her heart pounding fiercely as Hope convulsed in the back seat. Dr. Patterson's expression darkened as he examined Hope. "This is a delayed reaction to chemical poisoning. His organs are failing, primarily his kidneys. Without urgent treatment, he won't survive past nightfall." "What treatment is available?" Emma asked, though she already feared the cost would be staggering. "Dialysis medications, maybe surgery? I'm looking at a minimum of $2,800. Emma only had $400 left to her name. Her savings were wiped out by Hope's earlier care, and now she had lost her job at the diner. Dr. Patterson offered a payment plan, his empathetic eyes full of compassion. Yet even he couldn't pull off a miracle without financial assurance. "Without immediate care, the humane option sadly is euthanasia," he said softly. To end his suffering, Emma sat in the vet clinic parking lot for an hour, engine idling. Hope spasming in the back seat. The seizures were weakening not from healing, but because he was slipping away. She had failed again. She couldn't save Sarah Webb, and now she was helpless to save even a loyal dog. The animal shelter was 3 miles away. They would take him and ease him into peaceful rest. It would be mercy. Wouldn't it be better than watching him suffer as his organs failed, better than carrying another death's weight on her conscience? She started driving, tears blurring her vision. The shelter sign emerged ahead. Emma pulled into the lot, parked the car, and looked back at Hope through the rearview mirror. He lay unconscious, breathing faint and shallow. But as she watched, his paw twitched weakly, stretching towards the front seat and toward her. That paw came to rest gently on her arm, a small deliberate act even in his frailty, and Emma was instantly transported back to St. Mary's emergency room, Sarah Webb's hand reaching out in her last moments, her young fingers clutching Emma's wrist. "It's okay," Sarah had whispered. "You tried." "No," Emma said aloud, voice cracking. "No, I won't leave you. I failed her, but I refuse to fail you." She slammed the car into reverse and raced toward Dr. Patterson's clinic, driving 15 miles over the speed limit. Bursting through the door with Hope limp in her arms, she pleaded with the stunned vet. "Save him. I'll find a way to pay. I'll work it off. I'll beg. Please just save him." Dr. Patterson gazed at her a long moment, sensing the desperate fire within her that stirred something deep inside. "All right," he said softly. "I believe in second chances, Emma, both for you and for him." Hope pulled through the night. Dr. Patterson stayed late, administering fluids medications and vigilantly monitoring his vitals, a man who understood that sometimes saving even a single life means everything. Emma slept on the clinic floor. Her hand slid through the kennel bars, gently stroking Hope's fur, clinging to him, as if letting go would mean losing him forever. It was Tuesday morning. Hope's fever finally broke that day. By Wednesday, he raised his head. On Thursday, he accepted food from Emma's hand. The veterinary team watched silently, filled with quiet wonder, as Emma spent every moment at the clinic speaking softly to Hope. She shared stories of Sarah Webb, the girl she had failed, the girl whose dog Hope once was the very bond that had mysteriously linked them all. "He's chosen you," Dr. Patterson said one evening, observing as Hope refused to eat if Emma wasn't the one holding his bowl. "Dogs have a way of knowing who they truly need." But then Friday came bringing fresh storms. When Emma finally brought Hope home, her cottage door was vandalized, scarlet letters sprayed across it. "Killer." That afternoon, her landlord called. "I'm sorry, Miss Rodriguez, but neighbors have been complaining. I'm going to need you out by the end of the month." The local paper, the Milbrook Chronicle, ran a story tucked on page 2. It featured a former Chicago nurse, now living in Milbrook, revealing details of Sarah's death, the investigation, and Emma's apparent negligence. The reporter had done their homework, painting Emma not as a grieving soul, but as someone running from justice. Next came the diner owner's call. "Emma, this drama is bad for business. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." That same evening, flyers appeared on every telephone pole around town, meeting Saturday at 7 in the evening community center, an urgent discussion on community morals. Emma sat on the worn steps of her cottage. Hope pressed close beside her, holding a flyer someone slipped into her mailbox. Her hand steadied, no longer trembling, but inside she was numb, emptied out as though she'd already lost everything worth fighting for. "Maybe they're right," she whispered to Hope. "Maybe I don't belong here or anywhere at all." Hope leaned into her, solid, warm, and alive, a quiet strength she desperately needed. Saturday afternoon, as Emma packed her boxes ready to leave Milbrook for good, a knock sounded at her door. Expecting more judgment, she opened it to find an elderly woman with kindly eyes and silver hair pulled back into a neat bun. "Emma Rodriguez?" the woman asked softly. "Yes. I'm Patricia Webb, Sarah's grandmother." Emma felt the world tilt beneath her. She gripped the doorframe for balance. "May I come in, Mrs. Webb?" Emma wordlessly stepped aside. The woman entered the small cottage, her gaze immediately falling on Hope, who watched her with curious alertness. Tears rolled down this old woman's weathered face. "He looks so much better," she murmured. Sarah adored him. She rescued him from a puppy mill when she was 16, nursed him back to health. They were inseparable. "I'm so sorry about Sarah." Emma choked out, her voice heavy with pain. "I'm so sorry." Mrs. Webb looked at her with a depth Emma couldn't quite place. "I know who you are. I knew when you called last week." Emma's breath hitched as Mrs. Webb continued. "I've read the hospital reports. Every one of them. I understand it was an accident, a tragic mistake in the chaos. You didn't harm my granddaughter out of malice or neglect. You were fighting to save her when everything was against you. I gave her the wrong dosage, Emma confessed, the words ripping out of her. I was exhausted. I wrote the wrong number and she died because of my mistake. Yes, Mrs. Webb said softly. And that burden will stay with you for the rest of your life. But Emma, tragedy strikes. Poor choices are made. That doesn't make you a killer. Emma was speechless, standing there, as tears streamed down her face. Mrs. Webb's gaze darkened with worry. I came here to warn you. My son Mark is Sarah's father. He sees the world differently than I do. He's been swallowed by grief and fury. He holds you entirely responsible. I know, Emma whispered. He's coming to the town meeting tonight. He knows you're here. He knows you have Sarah's dog. Mrs. Webb hesitated. I don't know what he might do. Should I let him hope again? Emma asked, though her heart tightened painfully. Mrs. Webb looked down at Hope curled at Emma's feet. This dog is alive and thriving because of you. My son nearly destroyed him with his neglect and anger. All his sorrow was unleashed on this innocent creature. No, don't revive his hope. She moved toward the door, then paused to turn back. Tonight will be grueling. The town will judge you. Marcus will confront you. But Emma Truth has a way of making things right. Believe in that. After Mrs. Webb left, Emma sank to the floor, with Hope wrapping her arms around him. What am I going to do, boy? She murmured. Hope licked her cheek. And for the first time in 8 months, Emma felt something besides overwhelming guilt. She felt a spark of purpose. All right, she said, pushing herself up. If they want to judge me, let them. But they're going to hear the truth. Every single bit. She looked down at Hope, who stared back with unwavering loyalty. We're in this together. The Milbrook Community Center had never seemed so cramped. 230 people packed into a space meant for half that number. Their murmurs blended into a low roar that made Emma's head throb as she stepped inside. She'd arrived late on purpose, hoping to slip in unnoticed at the back. But as soon as she entered with Hope leashed by her side, silence slammed down like a guillotine. Every gaze snapped to her faces, ranging from curious to openly hostile. Emma felt their judgment pressing down on her like a crushing weight. Each step to the empty chair at the back, feeling like wading through thick mud. Hope pressed close to her leg, his warmth the only thing keeping her steady. Pastor William Thornton stood tall at the podium, his silver hair shining under the cold fluorescent lights. Behind him sat church elders and town council members, their faces carved with solemn worry. But it was the man in the front row who made Emma's heart seize Marcus Webb. She recognized him from the photographs Mrs. Mashu Webb had shown her, though the man in those pictures was smiling, vibrant, alive. This Marcus was a shadow of that man, mid-40s, but looking much older, cheeks, hollowed eyes, burning with a pain that never fades. His fingers gripped the chair's arms so hard his knuckles had turned white. Emma took her seat, Hope settling quietly at her feet. She could almost feel the weight of 14,000 whispers, the murmurs rising like leaves rustling in a storm. That's her? Can you fathom the nerve it takes to bring a dog here like some kind of armor? Pastor Thornton raised his hands to quiet the room. Friends and neighbors, thank you all for gathering tonight. We come together as a community because we hold dear shared values: trust, integrity, and moral courage. These are the very pillars that make Milbrook a safe haven to raise our children to live our daily lives. He paused, his eyes gently sweeping the crowd before settling with intent on Emma. Yet lately, doubts have surfaced about whether some among us truly embody these principles. Tonight, we are not here to judge, but to reflect on whether the standards we cherish as a community are being honored. He never mentioned Emma by name. There was no need. I'd like to invite anyone who wishes to speak, Pastor Thornton said, stepping away from the podium. Gladys Morrison was the first to rise, her 70-year-old frame radiating with fiery indignation. That woman, she declared, pointing straight at Emma, took the life of a 19-year-old girl in Chicago, a tragic medical error that robbed an innocent young woman of her future. Now she's hiding here in our town, draining funds from our church's charity to pay for a dog's medical bills, while folks around here are going hungry. A low murmur of agreement swept through the room. It's an outrage, Gladys pressed on, her voice rising with passion. A complete betrayal of human kindness. Tom Parker, the hardware store owner, was next to stand. I believe in second chances, but this woman is just running away from her past. That isn't atonement, it's pure cowardice. How are we supposed to trust her? Margaret Hayes said firmly, folding her arms. If she's made a deadly mistake once, what's stopping it from happening again? She works with the public. What if someone else ends up hurt? One voice fueled the next, an overwhelming tide of judgment crashing down on Emma. She remained frozen hope, whining softly at her side, sensing the pain her person was enduring. Then Marcus Webb rose, and silence fell like a heavy veil over the room. His hands trembled as he faced the crowd, his voice rough and charged with deep sorrow. "That woman," he said, and Emma recoiled at the bitter sting of the words. "Took my daughter from me, my Sarah. She was 19, radiant and brilliant, destined to be a veterinarian. A bright future with college, maybe a family one day. All of it ripped away." His voice broke, and he paused to gather strength. Sarah was in a car accident. It seemed minor, but internal bleeding wasn't detected in time. By the time she reached surgery, that nurse, he indicated Emma without meeting her eyes. She administered the wrong medication at the wrong dosage, a grievous mistake that turned a survivable injury into a fatal one. Emma felt tears well up, but fought to hold them back. "Have you ever buried your own child?" Marcus asked the silent crowd. "To lay your baby girl down, then return to a home filled with her belongings, clothes, books, her dreams, knowing full well you'll never again see her smile." Tears glistened on several faces. Mothers clutched their children tighter. "After Sarah's death, I was lost," Marcus continued. "I couldn't work, couldn't sleep. I couldn't get a single thought out of my head except that my daughter was gone. And every time my eyes landed on that dog, it felt like he was silently whispering hope. I pictured her hand gently rubbing behind his ears, the way she laughed whenever he did something goofy, the sound of her calling out to him." Marcus's composure was shattering, his voice speeding up raw with desperation. "That's when I made the choice to send him away. I drove him out to that forsaken plant and left him there abandoned in that filthy septic tank because I just couldn't bear to look at him any longer. The painful reminders of what I'd lost were more than I could bear." A gasp swept through the crowd. Even Pastor Thornton's face showed shock. And then I found out Marcus's voice climbed in intensity that she saved him. "The same woman who took my daughter's life saved her dog. Now she lives just 30 meters from my mother, right here in our neighborhood, playing the hero while my daughter lies buried beneath the earth." Finally, he turned to face Emma. His eyes burned with grief and fury. "You've taken everything from me, and now you even steal my right to remember my daughter. You don't get to be the hero here. You don't earn redemption through Sarah's dog." The weight of silence pressed down, suffocating. Emma felt every pair of eyes glued to her, hungry for her reply, her defense and explanation. Pastor Thornton cleared his throat gently. "Miss Rodriguez, do you have something you want to say?" Emma rose slowly, legs trembling. Hope pressed close to her side, steady and warm. She looked at Marcus Webb, his face worn and haunted, and saw her own reflection in those eyes, the weary face she'd been staring at in the mirror for the past 8 months. "No," she said softly. "He's right." Confusion flickered across the room. This was not the response they expected. "I did kill Sarah Webb," Emma admitted, her voice unwavering even as tears tracked down her cheeks. "Not with intention, not with my hands, but with my failure, my exhaustion, my mistake, and my all-too-human flaws." She took a shaky breath. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Chaos reigned in the emergency room, a terrible pileup on the Interstate 4 patients with critical injuries. Sarah Webb was the third. Internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. We were scrambling, every one of us running on empty. I had been on shift for 16 hours. The room was completely silent, everyone hanging on her every word. I wrote the order, an anticoagulant to stop clotting, but I prescribed 10 milligrams instead of 1. My hand trembled from sheer exhaustion. The numbers blurred together, and by the time we noticed the mistake, her voice was breaking. She was dying, and I was the one who killed her. Not the accident, not fate, but me. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I've been running away from that moment for 8 long months. From the investigation, the stares, the unbearable weight of knowing a 19-year-old girl is dead because I made a mistake. I came here to vanish, to slip into the shadows, to silently punish myself. She looked down at Hope, who gazed up at her with unwavering trust. Then I found this dog trapped in toxic sludge left by the very person who should have cared, scratching at concrete until his paws bled, crying out for help that never came. Emma's voice grew firmer. So yes, I spent money I earned to save him. Yes, I chose to save an animal when I couldn't save a human. And yes, Mr. Webb, I understand your anger, your grief, your hatred directed at me. She turned to face Marcus squarely. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't believe I deserve it. But this dog, her voice surged with fierce conviction, he is innocent. He's a casualty of my own failure, because when I lost Sarah, I forged the sorrow that made you cast him aside. He didn't deserve abandonment any more than Sarah deserved to be taken from us. The room crackled with tension, everyone leaning in. So go ahead, call me a killer. Label me what you will, hate me, condemn me all you want. But don't you ever say this dog isn't worthy of life? Don't even think about saying that saving one pure soul means nothing just because I couldn't save another. Her voice broke under the weight of emotion. Every single life matters. Human, animal, every one of them. I failed to save a human life, and that guilt will haunt me till my last breath. But I refuse to fail this dog. I won't leave him behind like I feel I left Sarah. I won't surrender on him the way everyone expects me to give up on myself. Emma's body trembled now, her words pouring out in a flood. If this is my chance for redemption, saving one shattered, mistreated creature who deserved far more from this world, then so be it. And if that makes me worthy of your judgment, judge me. But I won't apologize for choosing life over death. Not anymore. The silence that fell was profound. Emma stood there, chest heaving, tears tracing lines down her face, utterly vulnerable in front of everyone. Then Hope did something nothing could have predicted. He rose and crossed the distance between them, settling right in front of Marcus Webb. Marcus gazed down at the dog, the very being he had once tried to end now staring back with deep, intelligent eyes that held something Marcus couldn't quite put into words. Hope raised his right paw, holding it out with gentle purpose. Marcus uttered a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "Oh God," he whispered breathlessly. "Oh my God." His hands covered his face and his whole body began to tremble. She taught him that Marcus murmured, voice thick. Sarah taught him to do that. "Shake hands with your friends." Hope she'd say. "Show them you trust them." Marcus dropped to his knees, and Hope placed his paw into Marcus's open hand. The man crumbled, pulling the dog into a desperate embrace, weeping into his fur with a grief long locked away. "I'm sorry," Marcus sobbed. "God, I'm so sorry, Hope. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry." Emma stood frozen, witnessing this broken man hold the dog, both of them shattered in different ways. Tears began to fall openly from others in the crowd. The mood shifted from harsh judgment to something raw, deeply human. Hope gently licked Marcus's face, patient and forgiving in that quiet, profound way animals can forgive. Emma stepped forward carefully, kneeling beside them. Marcus looked up, his tear-streaked face hollow yet alive. "I wanted to hate you," he said quietly, voice trembling. "I needed someone to blame, someone to carry all this rage and sorrow. But seeing him there alive, whole and trusting," he couldn't find the words to finish. "We're both broken," Emma said softly. "Both wrecked by that night. I almost killed her dog," Marcus said, horror dawning in his eyes. "The one thing she loved most, second only to me. What kind of father does that?" "The kind who's drowning in grief," Emma replied. "The kind who doesn't know how to survive losing a child." Marcus reached out, and Emma took his hand. They knelt together, both hands resting gently on Hope, this living bridge between their shared heartbreak. Maybe, Emma whispered, we don't have to stay broken forever. Pastor Thornton had stood firm at the podium through the entire exchange, his face shifting from stern judgment to a softer, more uncertain expression. Just as he opened his mouth to regain control of the meeting, a woman's voice echoed from the back of the room. "Wait, there's something else you all need to hear." Patricia Webb rose, her silver hair shimmering in the light, her face calm yet resolute. My granddaughter Sarah left behind something. Something that changes everything. She stepped forward, clutching a small cardboard box, while the whole town held their breath in awed silence. That night, Emma barely found rest after the town meeting dissolved into tear-filled talks and cautious embraces. After Marcus asked if he could visit Hope the next morning, and after Pastor Thornton quietly apologized for his harsh judgment, Emma drove home feeling a lightness in her chest she hadn't known in months. Hope curled up beside her bed, and for the first time since Sarah Webb's passing, Emma fell asleep holding on to a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption was still within reach. The seizure struck at 3 o'clock in the morning. Emma jolted awake to find Hope convulsing violently on the floor, his legs stiff, foam frothing at his mouth. She had seen too many medical crises to mistake this for his usual episodes. This was catastrophic. "No, no, no," she whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. "Not now, please, not now." Wrapping him tightly in blankets, she hoisted his heavy 85 pounds, her arms burning with the strain. Hope's breaths came fast and shallow, his eyes rolled back. Emma sped through the dark streets of Milbrook at 70 miles per hour, praying silently that no officer would pull her over, praying even harder that Hope would still be breathing when they arrived. The nearest emergency veterinary clinic was in Nashville, 90 minutes away. Emma made it in 70 minutes, running 2 red lights and taking hairpin turns that made her tires squeal. Her hand never left Hope's side, feeling for his chest rising and falling, terrified every time the rhythm faltered. The emergency clinic was a bright, sterile haven that never closed. Emma burst through the automatic doors carrying Hope, where a young veterinarian in blue scrubs immediately took charge. "How long has he been seizing?" asked the vet, her name tag reading Dr. Sarah Chen. "Since 3 a.m. around 90 minutes, Emma said, her voice raw from tears during the drive. Dr. Chen's face darkened as she examined Hope. "Get him into ICU right away." She called to a technician and turned to Emma. "I need his full medical history, every detail." Emma poured it all out: the septic tank accident, chemical exposure, the earlier infection, his recovery. Dr. Chen listened intently as she worked inserting IVs, drawing blood, issuing commands with urgent precision. 30 minutes later, Dr. Chen found Emma in the waiting room, the look on her face making Emma's heart sink. "His kidneys are failing," she said, sitting beside Emma. "The chemical toxins caused delayed damage. His body's been fighting to keep up," Dr. Chen explained. "But things have reached a critical point. Without immediate help, he won't make it through the afternoon." "What kind of help?" Emma asked, though she already dreaded the answer: dialysis to keep him stable. "Then possibly a kidney transplant, though finding a match is nearly impossible and costs a fortune. We're talking about $15,000 to $25,000 for treatment," Dr. Chen said softly, but frankly. "Or we can choose to end his pain humanely right now." Emma sat frozen. The harsh fluorescent lights humming overhead, the sharp smell of antiseptic stinging her nose. She had $400 left in her bank account. No job, no prospects, no way to pull $20,000 out of thin air. "How much time do I have to decide?" she whispered. "He's suffering," Dr. Su Chen said quietly. "The kindest choice might be to let him go peacefully before the pain worsens." Emma's phone vibrated. A text from Marcus: "On my way to see Hope. Thank you for last night, for everything." She stared at the screen, tires blurring her vision. After everything, the rescue, the recovery, the breakthrough at the town meeting, the moment of forgiveness, it all was going to end here in this cold, sterile waiting room with a decision no one ever wants to face. She dialed Marcus. He answered immediately. "Emma, I'm about 20 minutes from your place. Is everything all right?" "He's dying," Emma said, her voice shattering. "Hope is fading. I'm in Nashville at the emergency vet. His kidneys are failing." Silence on the line then. "I'm coming. Send me the address." Marcus showed up 45 minutes later, still in the same clothes from the night before, looking as worn and sleepless as she felt. Emma rose as soon as she saw him, and without speaking, they embraced two people who had been enemies, Just 12 hours ago now, bonded by their shared fear of losing the creature who had brought them together. "Can we see him?" Marcus asked Dr. Chen. They were guided into the ICU, a room filled with kennels monitors and blinking machines. Hope lay on a cushioned table, tubes attached to his legs, machines emitting soft beeps. He was unconscious breathing, supported by oxygen. His once lively body shrunk to a fragile shadow. Marcus let out a sound as if punched in the gut. Emma squeezed his hand. They stayed with Hope for 2 hours, taking turns gently stroking his head, his ears, any spot they could touch without disrupting the equipment. Marcus shared stories about Sarah, how she'd rescued Hope from a puppy mill, how she had nursed him through parvovirus as a tiny pup, how inseparable they had been. She dreamed of opening an animal sanctuary. Marcus said, his voice thick with tears. After earning her veterinary degree, she planned to buy land and save the animals everyone else had forgotten. She'd say, "Dad, every life matters. Every single one deserves a chance." Emma wept quietly, finally grasping the true depth of who Sarah Webb was. What a remarkable soul had been lost to the world. "She sounds incredible," Emma whispered. "She was," Marcus confirmed. "And she didn't die because you failed. She died because life can be cruel and fragile, and sometimes there are no good choices, only terrible ones." He gazed down at Hope, his hand resting gently on the dog's still chest like now. They sat together in silence for a long time. Then Marcus spoke the truth they both felt. "We need to let him go, end his suffering." That's what Sarah would have wanted. She never believed in dragging out pain just for selfish reasons. Emma understood he was right. Holding on to Hope without a way to afford treatment was nothing but cruelty, wrapped in love. The kindest gesture, the most loving act, was to let him go peacefully, while they were both still there, while he knew he wasn't alone. "All right," Emma whispered softly. "All right?" They called Dr. Chen, her hands trembling as she signed the papers. The vet prepared the injection with practiced, gentle care, explaining every step, assuring them it would be peaceful. Emma and Marcus took their places on either side of Hope, their hands resting on his warm, fragile body, feeling the faint flutter of his failing heart. "Thank you for showing me I could still love," Emma murmured quietly. "Thank you for not giving up on me when I almost did." Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "This. Tell Sarah we're sorry, both of us. Tell her we tried to honor him right, Doctor." Dr. Chen approached, syringe in hand, her face gentle and professional, filled with compassion. "You're both incredibly brave," she said. "So? He was so lucky to have you with him at the end." She positioned the needle near Hope's IV line. Emma shut her eyes, unable to watch, her hand clasping Marcus's so tightly she could feel their hearts pounding as one. Suddenly, the receptionist burst into the ICU, flushed and urgent. "Dr. Chen, there's a call. It's urgent. You have to take this." Dr. Chen hesitated, irritation flickering across her face at the interruption. "I'm in the middle of—" "It's about the dog," the receptionist pressed. "Please, you need to take this right now." Reluctantly, Dr. Chen set the syringe down and stepped out. Emma and Marcus remained frozen in place, Hope's life balanced on a knife's edge, neither daring to hope. 2 minutes later, Dr. Chen returned, phone in hand, her expression one of utter disbelief. "You have to see this," she said, tilting her phone toward them. Emma stared at the screen, stunned beyond words. A GoFundMe page featuring Hope's photo, the one Dr. Patterson had taken just 3 days ago, capturing Hope's progress. The title read, "Save Hope, a Story of Redemption." The amount raised, $43,287. Emma was speechless. "Your local veterinarian, Dr. Patterson, started this last night after the town meeting," Dr. Chen explained, her voice full of wonder. "Someone recorded the meeting. The video went viral overnight, reaching millions. Your speech, Mr. Webb's breakdown, Hope's reaction. People are calling it the most moving thing they've ever witnessed." She scrolled through the comments, hundreds pouring in every minute. "Save Hope. Every soul deserves a second chance. This right here is humanity at its finest. Tears at my desk. Please let that dog live. I donated $100. Worth every penny to see this story end happily. Marcus stared at the phone, hair streaming silently down his face. "Sarah," he whispered. "She's watching. I just know she is." Emma couldn't find her voice. She only watched as the total climbed higher, 44,300. Dr. Chen smiled, the first genuine smile Emma had seen from her. "So, should we save this dog?" Hope's surgery lasted 6 long hours. Emma and Marcus waited together in the sterile waiting room, side by side, hearts heavy yet hopeful. Their hands would find each other in the darkest moments of doubt, grasping for comfort. Words were few between them. There wasn't much left to say that hadn't already been spoken. Yet the silence now held no bitterness. It was a silence shared by 2 souls who had walked through fire side by side, forever transformed by the journey. Marcus's phone kept lighting up with relentless notifications. The video from the town hall had gone viral across every corner of social media. News channels were catching wind of the story. "Nurse who lost her patient saves patient's dog," read one headline. "Forgiveness blooms in a small Tennessee town," read another. Comment sections overflowed with heartfelt stories, tales of redemption, fresh starts, and the undeniable healing touch of animals. Yet Emma's focus was unshaken. Her entire being was anchored on the surgery unfolding behind those pristine, sterile doors, on Hope's battle for survival fighting with all his might once more. At the 5th hour, Mrs. Patricia Webb appeared, carrying an old wooden box that seemed woven with the history of generations. She sat beside her son and gently placed a time-worn hand on his knee, simply whispering, "There's something you need to know." Marcus looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and heavy with exhaustion. "Mom, I just can't take any more right now." "You have to," she said with quiet strength. "Both of you." Her gaze then flicked to include Emma. What happened to Sarah wasn't the final chapter of her story, and you both need to understand that before Hope wakes. A shiver ran down Emma's spine, such certainty in the elderly woman's firm voice. "Before Hope wakes up? Not if." Mrs. Webb opened the box and retrieved a leather-bound journal, its pages creased and softened by time. This was Sarah's journal, kept close through high school and college. "I've been sifting through her things," she said, voice trembling, but resolute, searching for the courage to face what's inside. "And I found something." She turned to a page marked by a faded ribbon, revealing Sarah's neat handwriting, careful and deliberate, the script of someone who spoke with deep intention. This entry is dated October, 2 months before the accident, Mrs.'s. Webb began drawing a breath, then reading aloud, October 15th. "I did something today that feels meaningful, though I haven't told Mom or Dad yet. I updated my driver's license to become an organ donor. I know Dad would lose it. He's always been uneasy around talks of mortality, refusing to face the reality that bad things can happen. But I've been thinking about it a lot, especially after what happened at the shelter last week." Mrs. Webb's voice broke slightly, but she pressed on. "We had to euthanize 3 dogs because nobody wanted them. Perfectly healthy lives with years left to give, lost to a world that lacks space and compassion, a world that doesn't value every life equally. It shattered my heart and made me realize something. Life is so fragile. We're all just one accident, one illness, one random Tuesday away from the end. And when my time eventually comes, whether I'm 90 or 19 or somewhere in between, I don't want it to be a meaningless finale. I want my passing to count. I want every part of me that can give someone else a chance to live to do so." Marcus made a guttural sound beneath his breath. Without hesitation, Emma reached for his hand, and he gripped it like a lifeline. Mrs. Webb kept reading. Without hesitation, Emma reached for